edition of the SAVA Reports. My name is Lacey Arndt. I am the Marketing and Community Coordinator at SAVA Insurance Group. And joining us today, a very special guest, Andrew DiSilvestro, who is a veteran of the Connecticut Air National Guard. He's also the Executive Vice President of the Veteran Chamber of Commerce, and he's also the owner of Grade A Home Improvements, LLC, here in Middlefield.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Part of the SAVA Reports, this special series, we are interviewing veterans as a way to honor them for Memorial Day, for Flag Day that's coming up. So thanks again for taking the time and letting us sit down with you and talk to you about your military experience. So we'll start at the beginning.
Sure.
How old were you when you joined?
So I was 20 years old when I decided to join the Connecticut Air National Guard. One of my friends, at the time I was paying for college, and one of my friends was telling me I was crazy for working as often as much as I was working, and then also going to school full time. He said, "Why don't you join the military? The military would help you pay for school." And I thought about it, and eventually I decided to make the dive and join the Connecticut Air National Guard.
Okay, so were you nervous about that decision? Were you excited?
I was excited. I wasn't nervous. I knew that I could. If I put my mind to something, I could get it done. So, going for the military training, to basic training, to technical school after, I would be fine. I was excited. I got anxious at one point just because I wanted to get on with that portion of my life. I wanted to go do the training and then get back to school and finish my college career.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was the basic training?
It was interesting. So when you're in basic training, I actually turned 21 when I was in basic. Right when you join the military, it doesn't mean that you actually get into basic training.
Okay.
I'd actually wait in a holding pattern for about 6 to 7 months. And when I was in basic training, I was in training with a lot of individuals who were basically right out of high school. So I already had a couple years experience in college. I turned 21, so I was probably about 3 years older than most of the men and women I was in basic with. And a lot of the things that seemed like the big issues to them were kind of more minute to myself. And so it was interesting, even the maturity level at that point. And what that did was it actually launched me into becoming one of the main leaders. I was the dorm chief for my unit. And when the drill instructors weren't around, I was basically the one in charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So what job were you trained for?
I'm a structural civil engineer, also known as kind of like a combat engineer.
Okay.
So what my job is, if you know anything about maybe the CBs of the world, basically what my job is to drop into a bare base location and pull our own security, and at the same time establish a base or establish a facility out in the middle of nowhere. And so when we've been called out for the Haiti earthquake, when we were in Afghanistan, we would expand bases and we'd be outside the wire, and what we call full battle rattle, all our equipment and building up a base or facility. And that's basically what I'm trained to do.
Wow, that's a huge job. So how was military life? How was the food?
So it's interesting, and my assistant Tiffany Mellers can attest to this. Is the Air Force? They kind of call us the Chair Force for a reason. We're kind of pampered a little bit. So I got to tell you, the food on Air Force facilities has been awesome. When I did my training, so after basic training, I went to what's called technical school training, and that was on a Navy facility. And the food on their facility was god awful.
Okay.
And so there's actually phases when you're in technical school, and you have opportunity of graduating from phase 1 to phase 3. When you're in phase 3, you have the opportunity to go off base during lunch, during after hours, to go do whatever you want, basically after you're done, wearing the uniform. And I couldn't wait to be in phase 3 so I could go into restaurants or the local fast food joint, whatever it was, to get something besides the childhood food, because it was just god awful.
So what was the weather like? What was your room like?
Yeah, absolutely. So my basic training was in San Antonio. It happened to be in the May through June timeframe. So it was what they call black flag conditions. Black flag conditions is, I don't remember the exact temperature, but when you're at a certain temperature, you have to scale down the amount of training, and you have to drink a lot more fluids because it's just so hot. And so it was extremely hot in San Antonio, you could imagine, in May and June timeframe.
Yeah.
And then from there, I got shipped off to Biloxi, Mississippi, which was even more hot because it was less of a dry heat like San Antonio was. It was humidity. And I was there from, I guess, the end of June timeframe through the November timeframe. And basically it was very humid, and and then I would live through actually a couple of pretty awful hurricanes down there. So it was interesting being able to live that side of things and see kind of what they deal with on a every year occurrence, because we don't really see that up in Connecticut.
Now going into wartime for you, how did you travel there?
So prior to going up to Afghanistan, we go to something that's called combat skills training, CST. And mine happened to be in Fort Bliss, Texas, which is right on the border of Mexico, which again, they sent us out in July. It was god awful, scorpions everywhere, extremely hot. But after you get through that, I think it was like a 3-4 week period, you fly, believe it or not, you fly commercial planes. So I flew from a commercial plane to Maine. I forgot exactly where in Maine. I think it was Bangor, Maine. And then from there, you flew in this monstrous plane. I'm in the Air Force. I don't know my types of planes, believe it or not. Shame on me, right? And we flew from there. We flew into Germany, and then from Germany we flew into Kyrgyzstan. And one of the things I do remember is flying into Kyrgyzstan. We were in a holding pattern, and that's when we flew in a military plane into Afghanistan. What I remember is they treat you like royalty when you're flying over, and it's pretty great with and I don't know if this is the same way for all the federal government. I flew over with Marines and I flew over with the Army, so I would assume, but every couple hours they're giving you a meal, they're giving you hot towels. It was just like, you felt pampered, you felt good, and they keep your morale and your spirits up high when you're going over.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Was this your first experience in a foreign country, or had you been?
I've had been in other countries prior to that. That wasn't my first experience, but it was my first. So when we flew into Kyrgyzstan, I remember seeing it. Kyrgyzstan was kind of like a third world country, maybe a second class country, and I remember thinking, I was like, wow, this is tattered. It's not kind of what I'm used to, and I was like, I can't even imagine what Afghanistan's going to be like, because you only see videos, you see Hollywood portray what Afghanistan is.
Yeah. You
don't really feel it until you get there. And then when we flew into Afghanistan, and initially you don't really know what it looks like, because you're on a compound. I was actually on a German compound. I was in Mazar-i Sharif, and we were surrounded by mountainside, which is, believe it or not, Afghanistan's gorgeous. And not until I went on my first convoy and into the actual cities itself did I really experience it. I remember going into the city itself. The first thing I noticed is right when we got on the freeway or the highway was a huge Coca-Cola sign in Afghanistan, in their language. But I was just like, wow, Coca-Cola's everywhere. I mean, it's like, and then it kind of brought it back to reality. I was like, we're all humans. We're all living on the same earth, But people there were really nice, and were really grateful for the U.S. military being there, or I should say NATO, because it was all NATO facilitated, being there and working with them and helping to try to secure in their country.
So how many? What was the name of your unit?
So there's two sides. So currently I'm in the 103rd CES, which is up at Bradley, Connecticut. And when we got tapped to deploy, we deployed with, I believe, 60 plus men and women from our unit. But then what happens is you kind of get like this, this melting pot of individuals from, like, I think we had some from Ohio, some from California. All these National Guard units become this one unit, and we were called the 666. Okay. I remember. I don't know exactly. I'm sure there was. I think it was the Prime Beef or something, but I remember we were the 666.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your most interesting experience being over there?
The first time we convoyed out, I remember. They give you strict instructions, like keep pressing forward. If somebody jumps in the middle of the convoy, you got to keep going. It is what it is. Like, they don't want people getting in the middle of it. But I remember there was a motorcycle to the right of us. I was the what they call the vehicle commander. So I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I had 4 or 5 we were in what's called an MRAP, and we had 4 or 5 individuals in the vehicle. And I remember to the right of me there was a motorcycle driving, and it had like 7 or 8 people like on a motorcycle, and the guy was like swerving all over the road, and I'm getting nervous because I'm like, I don't want us to hit the guy, you know what I mean? And it was the middle of rush hour traffic, and they were like, no, this is what we have to press forward. But I just remember, like, it's totally a different lifestyle. Another thing I remember is one of our first jobs, they sent us off, and the local nationals had to use a crane to build this like brick wall. And to get from the ground to the top, instead of using like a man lift, they would actually jump on the crane wall and somebody would like hoist them up individually, and they were wearing sandals and their long, dress or whatever it was. And I just was like, wow, I'm definitely not, like, the ocean doesn't apply here, I guess,
Safety.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, what about your most exhausting experience?
I would say the most exhausting part of it is actually when you return home. Adapting back to civilian life. People want to understand, but they can't fully understand, and I think that is there's always a disconnect. Me and my wife decided at the time we were just boyfriend and girlfriend. We decided we were going to go on a trip away to Antigua for a couple days, for about 10 days. But I remember it wasn't relaxing because I was just so tight, wound up in a tight ball. I didn't know how to relax, because you're always on edge, you're always on guard. And then to make it worse, I'm kind of an alpha male. When somebody tells me, especially my wife, hey, calm down, you're kind of like, So I would say that is the worst part about it, most exhausting part of the whole wartime experience.
Yeah. Was there any jobs that you had to do that you weren't trained for or didn't expect to have to kind of jump into?
So when you're overseas, you kind of have to do whatever they tell you to do. So there's a lot of times where you're just jumping in because it has to be done, whatever it is. So yes, I mean, I think there's a lot of jobs that you're not trained on, but you work as a team, as a collective unit to get whatever the mission is at the time. And so if the mission is we're going to stack all these waters from point A to point B because we need to, even though that smells like a minute, small mission, you're just going to jump on. They don't train you to do stuff like that, but you just do it.
Did you receive any medals or citations or anything?
I did. I received the Air Force Achievement Medal for my deployment overseas.
Great. And how did you travel home from?
So it was the same thing. So you flew out of Afghanistan into Kyrgyzstan. You're in a holding pattern for a couple of days. And then from there you fly commercial airline. Again, this monster plane, and you get fed consistently. And we flew actually into Baltimore, and from Baltimore we took a smaller vehicle or smaller airplane into Bradley.
Okay. And was there any kind of homecoming waiting for you guys when you?
Yeah, so when we flew in, I believe the governor and the lieutenant governor were there. I'm not sure if the senators were there, congressmen and women, but our two-star general, General Martin, was there, who's a huge supporter of his troops going overseas, and my family was there, and my girlfriend at the time, who's not my wife, was there as well.
Okay.
It was great.
Post-war, how long have you remained in the military?
So my 9-year anniversary comes up this September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And what was the highest rank you received?
So currently I'm a staff sergeant.
Okay. What are your hobbies?
My number one hobby I would say is golf.
Okay.
I love golf.
Is it a great time of year for golf?
It is a great time for golf. I enjoy politics. I enjoy building business ideas.
Okay.
It sounds crazy, but once a week I get together with one of our coworkers, and we sit down. We just for a couple hours we just whiteboard on business ideas or opportunities and how we can scale businesses. And so that really interests me.
Okay, very cool. So what other organizations do you belong to?
So I'm obviously involved with the Connecticut Veterans Chamber of Commerce. I also sit on the board for the National Guard Association for the state of Connecticut. I'm the vice president of that organization as well. And that goes for efforts for lobbying for rights for the men and women of the Connecticut Air National Guard or the National Guard in general. And I'm involved with Angus, which is the National Association for the National Guard. I'm also involved with NARI, which is the National Association of the Remodeling Institute, and I'm involved with the Connecticut chapter.
Okay. When do you find time to sleep?
I don't sleep very often. No.
So how did you become involved with the Veteran Chamber of Commerce?
So I met Mike Zakea. Mike Zakea is the founder of the Veterans Chamber of Commerce. I met him 3 years ago now. I don't remember exactly where I met him. I met him at some kind of veterans forum.
Okay.
And me and him just kind of connected. We had a synergy going. And he invited me or asked me to get involved with he runs this entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans, disabled veterans out of UConn. and he said, hey, I want you to apply and try to get involved, and I'm going to invite you to come for my semester that I have coming up in the fall time frame. And so I got involved, and I applied, and he accepted. But in the interim, he asked me to start jumping on the phone calls for the Veterans Chamber and just listening to their board. They would have, I guess, conference call board meetings. And they needed somebody to launch this. They wanted to do this annual luncheon event. The chamber is still in its infancy, and it still really is. We're only in our third year at this point. And he actually at the time introduced me to who is now my assistant, Tiffany Mellers, and asked me and her he kind of tapped us to run this initial luncheon. And so we did that. We were very successful. And I went through his program, and after that he said, I really want to keep you involved with the chamber. Are you interested? And I was, and so I just became initially just a board member. I would help facilitate different events. And then last August, they tapped me and asked me if I would be interested in running the everyday operations, and voted me in as executive vice president.
Great. So is this the only location in Connecticut, or? Correct.
So there's we're initially, so we're out of Wallingford, Connecticut. This is the only, there's only one Veterans Chamber of Commerce in the state of Connecticut. We're trying to work with other organizations to kind of make this like a turnkey operation, and so we can put it in every state. Okay. It's been slow going, but the idea is something that people really like, and we think it could take off. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Sure. Believe it or not, there's 43,000 veteran-owned businesses in the state of Connecticut. 13,000 of those actually have payrolls, but that number, when I first heard that number, I was like, wow, it's crazy.
That's huge. Yeah. So do you have any advice for veteran entrepreneurs, or do you have any resources, websites they can check out?
Absolutely. So first off, I would say, if you are a veteran and you are thinking about doing anything entrepreneurship business-wise, you have a 25% chance more of succeeding because you're a veteran. It's a true statistic, because you're taught persistence, you're taught how to get through tough times. So do it, jump in, that's what I'm saying. The Connecticut Veterans Chamber of Commerce itself can help you, can put together the right incubation tools so we can help you grow and succeed. We're at ctvetschamber.org. Again, that's ctvetschamber.org. And then the last thing is the entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans, disabled veterans up at UConn, and reaching out to the founder of the chamber and also the facilitator of that program up at UConn. His name is Michael Zakea. So if you go to UConn's website, you can navigate to it. Getting an opportunity to get involved with that program as well as really can help out veterans. Okay,
great. Well, thank you for taking the opportunity to meet with us again. We really appreciate it. And thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you on our next report. Thanks so much. Have a good day.